Let's make sure we remember to name our file. So I'm going to do a save right away. And I'll need to go to where I'm working on my project here. So I'll need a second to navigate it. Now I'm going to make a new folder. M6. And rename our roof system. And actually I got to click into this. And we'll call this roof form. And I'm not going to just call it roof form and save. And now we can go ahead and start building an adaptive component to fit onto this pattern. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to new, and we're going to open up a family, and we're going to look for a generic adaptive component, pattern based though. And it comes up with those 4 points that are going to mate up with the 4 points on the grid systems that we're establishing. So I'll open that, and while I remember to, I'm going to go ahead and save this right away. And we'll save it in M6 content, and we'll call it the truss unit or frame unit. And let's take a moment to see what we've got here. We have four adaptive points that have already been set up for us. We can actually move these adaptive points. If I can select it properly, it should move. I'm not getting the indicators for direction. I guess I can just drag it. And it'll move, and these reference grids that go along with it stay adaptive also. We're going to make a series of points above this. So the way we're going to do that, and then we're going to start generating another grid system above it. And the way I'm going to do that is place some points on top of these points that are identical. So I'm going to go up and set a reference plane. This is a critical first step. Click that box, grab a point, and place that point right on top until you get that X. I'm going to go over to the modify, and I'm going to select that point again. And I'm going to pull it up so that it's 2 foot offset. And hit apply. Now watch what happens when I move the grid. The point moves with it. That means that it's adaptive, and it will behave that way with any component that gets attached to it. So I'll just step back until that on Control Z until we get back to that single point. Now I'm going to place a bunch of the other 4 points on that, all with that same offset of 2 feet. So I'm going to go to Set, Reference Plane, place a point. I can actually multiple do this. I'll go set the plane again for this set, place a point, and set a reference plane for this one, and place a point. And I can actually walk around and just grab these points. You'll notice this is highlighting the whole reference grid of the adaptive point, but I can touch in and just select the center adaptive point. And if I hold the control down, I can move in and grab the other 3 or the other 2. And it'll say when I have all 3 of those points gathered, it'll say reference point and 3 the number. And I can actually just say 2 foot offset, and they'll all have that offset to them. Now, really important, save you a lot of frustration, you want to move these elements around, then do Control Z again, just to make sure that these points are moving adaptively with each other so you haven't made any mistakes. This will save you a lot of heartache. Once you start placing components, things will start looking correct right away. Let's go ahead and now make an extrusion around this whole assembly. And I'm going to do that first by making a bunch of reference planes. So I'm going to turn on 3D snapping, grab my line tool, have it set for reference, and start clicking on these points. I probably don't have, I do have it on chain, so I just can click from point to point to point. And now that I've established that, I'm going to go once again and check to make sure that this behaves adaptively, and you'll notice now how those lines are moving the same way, and you should make sure that your drawing's doing the same thing. Now we're going to make an extrusion of the frame around there, and I'm going to do that by first putting a reference point on this line anywhere, and then I'm going to zoom in on it using the center scroll wheel, and I'm going to create a circle. And I'm going to first set the reference plane for this line, and you'll notice that when I'm on top of it, that this reference, and it's only showing one reference plane right now, which makes it easy. But I make sure I select that reference plane. Then I'm going to grab the circle tool and catch that point, click and drag off, and I'll make a tube that is 4-inch in diameter, and I'll click off on that. Now if I select the whole reference grid by clicking it, and then I hold down on the control key and roll in until I can grab the circle and click it. Now I have multiple selected, both the whole reference grid going around and the circle itself. And if I go to create form, it's going to automatically extrude that frame out around the whole assembly. And I'm going to now test it to make sure it's still behaving adaptively. And now we're ready to import it into our space frame, or our roof surface that we've created. So I'm going to, I'll first save this, then I'll load the project, and there's no other projects open, so it isn't asking where we want it. And I'll go to the 3D view of this project, and I'll select our grid system. And remember, if you haven't done this already, if we were to you can turn the surface on and off, and make sure that you have selected to divide the grid off. And one more thing we need to do is we need to create a surface representation, which is something that identifies not only just the grids and intersections, but these nodes. So I'm going to go through this. It's critical that we select this frame, go to surface representation under the arrow, select it, and turn on the nodes, and click OK, and now you'll notice that all the nodes are highlighted there. And we could actually, while we're here, we could do the same thing for both of the other two surfaces also, because we'll be needing to have those nodes available. So I want to click on the grid and make sure those nodes are highlighted. So now I'm going to select this pattern, and or this top surface. You'll see it says no pattern. And if I click on the front of this, I can go down, and what will have been loaded in, actually it's not showing up here, it's right down here, is the frame unit that we've created. So I'm going to select it, and it's going to take a minute, and then the modeler is going to apply that plane to it, or that frame to it. So now we can zoom in, and we can see that frame that we've created, that 2-inch round tubing or 4-inch round tubing, is now sitting there just above the grid system, 2 foot above as we set it up. So on the next clip, we'll look at adding some more components to our frame system.